The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
Obviously, we over budgeted last year. I hate to say that I was right, but I was right. So.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
I take our constitutional rights, the constitutional rights of my constituents, very seriously.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
Mr. Speaker, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you boil this down, there is never any time that a parent's right to govern what their children see and what they're exposed to should ever be bypassed.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Article 9 of the Idaho State Constitution. The stability of a Republican form of government, depending mainly upon the intelligence of the people, it shall be the duty of the legislature of Idaho to establish and maintain a general, uniform, and thorough system of public free common schools. It is our duty to have free common schools to maintain our Republican form of government. There's no other primary reason for us to fund public education is to maintain our system of government so that we all have the freedoms that are enshrined in our state constitution and our federal constitution. Some of the other issues that were brought up, there's too many tests. My goodness. How many of us had to go through tests once a week or quizzes? The purpose of a test is to find out what the students know, what the teacher has maybe left out if there's a common question in that test that everybody seems to miss. It's a feedback mechanism to the teacher and also a measure of the proficiency of the students. We have proficiency measurements in math, English, social sciences, science. Too many tests. Okay, call them a quiz then. I don't care. As far as not affecting public or private schools, the state of Idaho has already established that we are going to allow the private schools to have autonomy from the public schools. And this is the wish of the taxpayers of the state of Idaho as provided by in House Bill 93, which funds private schools and homeschooling. And lastly, it was mentioned that this is going to interfere with students in their senior year. They're going to have to readjust their schedule. Let me read something out of the statement of purpose. Students graduating prior to January 1st, 2029, that's 4 years in the future, who have satisfied the previous civics requirements prior to the 2026-2027 school year are exempt from completing this new requirement. We have given them plenty of time to incorporate this curriculum and the testing requirements for that. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would ask for your green light.
Debate is closed. Question is House Bill 397, pass the House. Clerk will mark the machine, and the members will cast their votes.
All right, folks, welcome Idaho Signal. We're going to watch the vote tally up here. Looks like it's going to be overwhelmingly, mostly. Looks like one
every member voted?
Republican so far joining. Well, maybe two. Nope. You got two
Does any member
Democrats.
wish to
Two
change their
Democrats and a Republican
Clerk will lock the
voting
machine
no
and report the pairs.
on this bill, but everybody
Claim
else
12
says,
votes
yeah, let's
aye,
teach
Birch
better
votes-
civics in our education system here in the public schools. So that bill passes. It will head on over to the Senate, where it will meet some more criticisms, I imagine, from some of the Democrats. Welcome, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. It is March 17, 2025. My name is Matt Edwards. Yes, you can follow me on X at True Matt Edwards. Also over on Truth Social. I think on Truth Social, it's True Matt Edwards. Is it the same? I don't remember. Anyway, but if you're over there, welcome. Welcome to the show, because we've been posting stuff over on Truth Social. So I want to make sure that the folks that found us there have found us there. If you're watching on YouTube and Facebook, thank you so much for watching us there. Be sure you have an account over on X and Rumble so that you can follow us over there, just in case something happens to YouTube and Facebook. You never know. I mean, I saw something today where remember those doctors out in Bakersfield, California, very early on in the pandemic. They were saying, hey, this isn't as serious as it needs to be. There's treatment for it, blah, 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 blah. Then they were like censored all over Facebook. Well, they're still censored today. You still can't even talk about them. So anyway, regardless, here we are, we're live and we're kicking and we're moving along. Thank you for being here on a Monday with me. Folks, there's a lot to navigate. There's always a lot to navigate. Especially if you're like we are, we're like in the weeds. We're looking at every nuance. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of things going on back and forth. But what we aim here to do is to just keep the ball moving forward down the field, try and help get our conservative legislators as much support as we can as they maneuver and get bills through the legislature. So, or stop bad ones from coming through. So we'll continue to do that. One of the things that we've been paying attention to, though, however, is what's going on in the Boise High School. I don't like to spend too much time on this. These topics, these one-off topics, but this is very disturbing. If you've been following the show all last week, we mentioned it, I think, almost every day since we broke the story on Tuesday, and it's very disturbing to me that we're still trying to get answers, and there hasn't been any sort of widespread news, investigation on what's happening in the Boise School District with this gender support plan, which a student apparently was under. A male student was apparently under this gender support plan, and he ended up going into the girls' bathroom where another female student discovered him doing some very inappropriate things in the bathroom. So we've been following this story. We've been trying to get some answers. We sent out a public records request asking the district to send us all the materials having to deal with a gender support plan. And then we also emailed the administrator at Boise High School. We had a redacted email that we showed, a fully redacted email. We have the partially redacted. We'll share that in a moment. But that's kind of like where we're at right now. Is we've emailed them and we haven't heard anything back. And so we're gonna escalate this a little bit more and start naming names, because this is a serious issue. And the further we dive into it, the more we see how prevalent this is across the country, and it's a real problem. I mean, right now the Supreme Court is dealing with aspects of it. The Ninth Circuit Court is dealing with aspects of it here, and we thought we had finished this when we passed Senate Bill 1100 in 2023, saying that boys will go to the boys' restroom and girls will go to the girls' restroom, and that's the end of it. We passed a law, but the courts are playing fast and loose with this stuff when it's just common sense. So we'll get into that. Just real quickly though, the House and the Senate are both fast and furious going through bills. Remember, when we had Allman on last week, he said that they have a target date of ending the session by the 22nd, which is 5 days from now. And they have a laundry list of bills to get to. So they're going, and they're still introducing new bills. So I don't know the mentality behind some of this, but hopefully they're just getting through it. And, we've seen bills introduced on the last day that are just there to get a number so that they can talk about it in the off session. So that being said, there's a lot of bills going through both the House and the floor, and we'll try and keep you updated as well as we can. The ticker you see down below here will keep you updated on some of the bills that we're paying attention to and ones that we know that you are as well. So very good, very good. Okay, so let's get to this. Let's get through this. This public records request we did. So we sent off a public records request. So it's like similar to like a FOIA request that said, please send us all the materials having to deal with the gender support plan. And what we got back was 2 emails that were newsletters that contained the term gender support plan. And all it did was link out to a couple of articles, which we'll get into in a second, because the articles are actually fascinating. But what we got back were 3 documents. 2 of the documents were copies of a newsletter email that someone in the administration, the school district administration, received in the last couple of months. And it had the phrase gender support plan in it. And then the 3rd document was something called the student support plan. So let's throw that up here. This is the student support plan. This looks oddly familiar if you watched last week or saw any of our clips. This is oddly familiar because it used to be called the gender support plan. And so this is the exact same. This is the exact same document that, or I won't say exactly the same because it's been reformatted, but this is the document that they sent me. Now this doesn't even say gender support plan, but he supplied it anyway. The lawyer at the district said, I think this is what you're looking for. And I appreciate that. And so now they're calling it the gender support plan, but it asks the same questions and it's a slightly different format. Here is the gender support plan that we got a hold of before. This is something that they had apparently a couple years ago, and it had a couple of grammatical errors and it was a different format. But as you can tell, it's the same thing. Now, why is this important? Because the email that we showed you has talked about the gender support plan. And the gender support plan was the thing that this student that was caught, in the bathroom doing what he was doing, was under this gender support plan. So there's 2 things real quick. A, the email that was sent out on February 5th said gender support plan. When we did our public records request, they sent us the student support plan. So this is those things like I don't want to ascribe to malice what incompetence could cover, but if it's called a gender support plan by the administrator to the parent, yet the document has on it now apparently student support plan, there's something weird here. There's a red flag, because when you do a public records request, maybe this is the reason why I don't have any documents that talk about gender support plan. Right? So now I got to go back and do a public records request and say, give me all the materials pertaining to student support plan, because apparently they rechanged the name. And this is what they do, folks. They get caught with their hands in the cookie jar and they have to rename the program if there's a huge outcry about it. And there has been huge outcry about this because it's up at the Supreme Court. Here is the articles. Let's bring up this article here. This is the Supreme Court article. And you know what's really annoying, you guys? I had all of this stuff. I had all of this stuff on my computer ready to go. I'm like, I'm going to be prepared. And I got to fish around here for it. Okay, I got it here too. All right, there it is. This is an article that was dated back December of last year, 2024. Supreme Court declines the K through 12 cases on gender support plan and a race-conscious admissions. Are two different cases. So we're going to focus on this gender support plan. So apparently, there was a case in brought by Parents Protecting Our Children versus the what is that? The Eau Claire Area School District of Wisconsin. This is happening in Wisconsin. Parents have a lawsuit that alleged that the policy, this gender support plan, allowed students to change their names and pronouns and use facilities aligning to their gender identity without parent notification or consent. Educators and staff, the lawsuit claimed, were trained that parents are not entitled to know their kids' identities. This is the problem, right? This gender support plan clearly has on the top, how do your parents know, and how much approval are they of this transition? 1 through 10 or 0 through 10, right? So if you scroll down a little bit further, it says gender support plans are personalized documents intended to build common understanding among staff and parents, right? If we go down a little bit further, so here we go. The Supreme Court's decision not to take the case because they declined taking the parents' case against the Supreme Court against the school district. The Supreme Court's decision to not take the case was not unanimous. Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas, two titans, right, dissented, with Alito writing that the question presented by the case, whether a school district violates parents' constitutional rights in the raising of their children when it encourages or assists in a student's decision to transition genders. It is a quote, "It is a question of great and growing national importance, and we are told that more than 1,000 districts have adopted such policies." Holy cow. This was in the dissenting opinion. A little bit further down here. No, that's not true. No. Where else was it? Maybe it's in the next article. I want to make sure I get this. Yeah. So let's move on to this other article. And the only reason I found these two articles was because they were in the public records request under the gender support plan. And so here's the other article. Why some schools are embracing gender support plans, right? So this was published in September of 2023. Okay. And the meat of all this, I think, is a little further down. I want to make sure we find it. Real quick. Gender support plans and what they're intended to create a shared understanding among school staff about the student's authentic gender and how they will be accounted for and supported by the school, according to Gender Spectrum. You guys remember that? Gender Spectrum, these are the folks that basically, I think, have come up with this entire plan and have rolled it out across the country. This is Gender Spectrum. Every gender support plan is uniquely based on the student's needs and personalities. There is yes, here we go. So down in the second section, who's involved in the GSPs? It's a little further down there. Yeah. Here it is, the second paragraph. However, school staff should closely collaborate with the student to determine whether caregivers or others should be involved in the conversation, according to Gender Spectrum. For example, parents may not always be on board, considering that fewer than 40% of the alphabet youth found their homes to be affirming. If there is a way to include parents in formulating the policies for gender support plans, it should be explored. It should be explored if there's a way. Otherwise, back up to that other thing. Otherwise, school staff should closely collaborate with the student to determine whether caregivers, aka the parents, the guardians, those responsible for the child, whether or not they should be involved. So this is September of 2023. These are when these things are being rolled out. And we know, because of Anna Miller's work over at the Idaho Freedom Foundation, that in 2023, this is when she was publishing all of this stuff, this gender support plan that she found at Boise High School. So the intent here all along has always been to see whether or not the parents should be involved in these gender support plans. And a gender support plan, folks, is basically saying, do you want to be a boy now? Do you want to be a girl now? Okay, well, we are going to, we're fully Full stop. You're in control. Here's the plan. Here's what we'll do. What is your name? What are your pronouns? What should your friends in school know about this? How far out do you want to be? I mean, all it is total psychosis affirming, right? That's what's going on here. So who is doing this? Who is doing this? Well, over at Boise High School, I'll tell you who's doing this, or at least who knows that it's going on. Let's bring up this now we're doing a partial redaction of the email. A partial redaction. This is a partial redaction here. We've showed you this email before. And but here are the folks at the Boise High School. Eric Rausch, he's the assistant principal at Boise High School. He's the one responding to the parent here. The assistant principal, one of the assistant principals at Boise High School, Eric Rausch, who is confirming that students who are on a gender support plan are able to use the bathroom that aligns with the gender they identify as, which apparently means also that they can go into the bathroom and do what this boy did to be found by a female student. The other person is Jamie Fenwick. She's another vice principal. And apparently at this school, they divide up vice principals by last name of the student. So some vice principals handle one section, a couple others handle the other. So these are two vice principals that know that this is going on. Now, this isn't a bombshell. I'm just trying to share with you the names because we're going to continue to do this and expose these people. Because if you watch Friday's show, Eric Rausch is the type of person that says, I would rather protect this woke ideology and these gender support plans than protect girls in school. I would rather do that. I would rather bow down to the alphabet mafia, which we don't do on this program. I know you folks out there watching don't do that. But I would rather do that than stand up for the girls that are coming into our school. And I would rather do that than actually help and be a leader for the young men that are in your school, for the boys that are growing up, going through troubling, puberty's rough. We all went through it, whether you're a girl or a boy. And you need, teenagers need models. They need model women and they need model men to look up after and to talk to about what it means to be a competent, common sense person. Okay, we just got through watching a vote on how we need to teach civics in order to keep our republic. These are serious things we're dealing with here. So I hope you're with me, folks. I hope you're with me. I know I keep beating this thing, but this is important. And here, look, I'm not out looking to hang this kid who went into the bathroom. He clearly needs help, and I want to get him the proper help. We don't enable this. We don't enable it. All right. We'll keep tabs on this. If we get any response anywhere else, we're going to do another public records request and see if we can get the student support plan, because apparently the school doesn't call it a gender support plan anymore. So we'll keep tabs on it. You got to be very specific with these public records requests. If you're not specific enough, they won't. Although I do appreciate he did send me on he did give me a kernel, a crumb to follow down by calling it student support plan. All right, folks, we'll take a quick break. Of course, we got Almond lined up today, and hopefully if the Senate gets off the floor at a decent hour, we hope to have Senator Glenita Zeiderveld on as well. And so the invite is out to her. We can talk through budgets. She's on JFAC, and they're sending through a lot of budgets and spending our money. So let's talk to her and figure it all out. We'll be right back. See you next.
That's exactly what happened. You want to pull the tape? You can pull the tape because we now got video.
The dictionary defines a pledge as something that you give as a sign that you'll keep a promise. As Idahoans, that's what we're looking for in our elected leaders. A sign that they'll keep their word. Talk is cheap, and so are political promises, hidden agendas, and special interests. This is why we created the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge, affirming the values Idahoans have been living by for over 100 years, inspired by the only two documents everyone has agreed to live by. So when an Idaho legislator signs our pledge, inviting voters to publicly hold them accountable, that's what we call political integrity. The pledge restores trust and honesty between voters and their legislators. It means protecting our shared values and ensuring your voice is heard in Boise. And that is priceless. Thank your legislator for having the political courage to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge. And if they haven't, it's time to ask why.
Welcome to Idaho. Vote red.
Welcome to Idaho. Grab a plastic bag, get a plastic straw, and quit recycling.
Welcome to Idaho. Congratulations, you have some new hobbies. Skiing and snowboarding every weekend.
Welcome to Idaho. We sing all 11 verses of the national anthem, so know them by heart.
Welcome to Idaho. Cash is king. Unless you have gold or silver.
Welcome to Idaho. It's potato, not potato. Get it right.
Welcome to Idaho. If someone waves at you, it's polite to wave back. Just a thought.
Welcome to Idaho. Buy a gun, get some chickens, and prepare to get hunting, because if you don't kill a deer every year, you're not a real Idahoan.
Welcome to Idaho. You can borrow our wood splitter anytime.
Welcome to Idaho. If you're expecting everywhere to be just like Boise, you're in for a heck of a surprise.
Welcome to Idaho. North 40 is that way. There is also one in Lewiston.
Welcome to Idaho, where we do things ourselves. Get some dirt and worms under them nails. Nobody's gonna pump your gas for you around here.
Welcome to Idaho. Get rid of your Tesla and your Prius in the name of all that is good.
Welcome to Idaho. Please bring a Chick-fil-A. Please.
Welcome to Idaho. Don't mess it up.
Welcome to Idaho. If you don't stand for the flag and kneel for the cross, you don't belong.
Welcome to Idaho, the final frontier on the battle against marijuana. Oh, my hands have been mittened.
Welcome to Idaho. If you think everywhere is just like Boise, you're in for a heck of a surprise. All right, a heck of a surprise. All right. For the kids, I forgot about that.
North 40 is that way. No one knows where it actually is.
People will. Well, like, oh, they're facing.
Okay. For all the people in the comments, welcome to Idaho. North 40 is that way. Welcome to Idaho. Don't be a dummy.
Oh, another winner from In the Know Idaho, Lily and Henry out there. You know, it's funny. I agree. She should have pointed the right direction, because this is you just put something on the internet and they will figure out exactly where you were, which direction you were. They'll look at the contrails overhead. They'll look at the time of day. They'll figure out the shadows, and they will say, actually, it's the other way. So good call. Good call on keeping that in. All right. Brian Allman is with us. Let's say hello to Brian. Hey, Brian, happy St. Patty's Day, my friend.
Yes, indeed. It's the one day of the year I can wear this tie, so I will not miss that chance.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Real quick. Chick-fil-A. Do we need a Chick-fil-A in Idaho?
We actually have a couple down here in Meridian and Nampa and Boise. My wife worked at Chick-fil-A when she was a teenager, so she has a special attachment to it. But honestly, I prefer other places.
Fair enough. Okay. I went out last night we went out for some chicken for lunch yesterday. It was mighty good. It was way better than anything I had at Chick-fil-A. So anyway, that being said, all right, let's get to some stuff today. I wanted to ask you about the bill, the bills that passed earlier as we were going on, the civics legislation, because there have been arguments in committee throughout that we should have civics. This should apply to private schools as well. If we're going to force a public school to do civics properly, then we should be telling private schools to do the same thing, because they're now taxpayer funded as well. And this is all because of House Bill 93 with these refundable tax credits to cover outside non-public school educational expenses. What do you make of this argument? I feel like we're going to keep seeing this argument over and over again, that we're now funding private schools and therefore they should be held to the same standards as public.
Well, that is the exact argument that some of the homeschoolers or the people who do attend private schools that they worried about bills like House Bill 93, that once you start taking the government money, then they're going to come in and start telling you what you can and can't teach. And that's what people who support those bills have said, no, we're not going to allow that to happen. Obviously, that's what the federal government does. Why is President Trump able to affect the policies of almost every college and university in America with a stroke of a pen? It's because they all take federal money. And so, there's that implicit threat or explicit threat that if you don't obey that dictate, if you don't, in this case, stop allowing men to play in women's sports, then you're going to lose that federal money. So that is something I think we need to be vigilant about. However, I don't necessarily buy the argument itself. Just because parents can claim a tax credit for private school tuition doesn't necessarily follow then that the government should be able to come in and tell those schools what to do. Remember, with public schools, most children go to public schools. That's the default. That's, if you don't really think hard about it, that's just where you send your children. I grew up in the public school system. I didn't really think anything, I figured that was normal, that everyone did it, which most everyone does. And yet, being public schools, it's part of the legislature's mandate in our Constitution to make sure that they run as they should, and that can mean establishing standards for curricula, because if you don't, then either you're going to have 100 different standards, or you're going to have outside groups come in and run the show, which is part of the problem. We have outside groups coming in and saying you need gender support plans, and you need to teach that America's a racist, sexist place, and all that. And so the legislature, I think, is acting within its constitutional purview here. Private schools are a different matter. Parents pay for those. Even if they're getting a tax credit to reimburse some of it, that's still their money that they're paying. And if they decide that those private schools are not teaching what they should, if they're not upholding the values that they believe they should, then they are able to go and take their money to a different place, whether it's reimbursed by a tax credit or not. That's called the free market. And as numerous people have said, parents are the ultimate accountability. So with public schools, I believe it's perfectly right that the legislature has some authority there to say you must teach the truth about America and how government works. Whereas with private schools, if parents want that, then they can talk to their private school administrators and see if it'll happen. And if not, they are free to take their money and go somewhere else, just like you're free to shop at a different store if you don't like the message they're presenting.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if this is a direct correlation, but we do get right now we do get a grocery tax credit, right? We get money back from the grocery tax that we pay, and because of that, does that mean that we are that we should abide by like SNAP benefits, whatever the federal government says how we can spend our food? I mean, I admit it's a tax. You're not covering the cost of the actual food. But that being said, it's like anytime the government is giving you your own money back or is helping to subsidize some portion of your costs, it comes with those risks, which that you clearly outlined. However, this is the whole reason why we should have had HJR 1, which would have codified in our Constitution that the parents have the ultimate say, the last say in how a child is educated.
Yeah, the grocery tax credit, I actually made that argument during debates on House Bill 93, saying that we have precedent for a tax credit in which people can claim that to offset something, and the government is not telling you what you can or can't do. We don't have government coming in and saying you have to shop at a certain store, you only buy certain things. Obviously, if you're taking government money directly, that's a different thing, and that's why I think the tax credit approach to House Bill 93 was probably the best start for school choice, because if it was something else, say an education savings account, I think the argument would be stronger that the government could exercise some authority there. Got a flock of birds outside.
Yeah, well, and then of course there's always the argument they're using right now with the launch grants, where post high school graduates get up to $8,000 to spend to further their training, their workforce training, their education, and that can be used at some religious private institutions. And are they being told what to do? I don't think so, at least not yet, but we'll see. All right.
We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. All right, Brian. Well, that being said, speaking of private institutions, Barbara Ehart was before the Senate State Affairs Committee this morning with a bill to help protect free speech on college campuses. Let's watch a little bit of that.
Committee, thank you with this one. This is something on which I've been working for quite a number of years, actually. And it was a few years back. It had been moved to the 14th order and just got hung up on a small technicality that had been fixed. And so we waited a couple years, brought it back, and during these couple years, we've been in great communication with Boise State. We have been in communication with our three main state schools, but Boise State is in our backyard, so it was a lot easier to be in contact with Boise State. You know, I spent 15 years at higher ed, and I'll tell you, this idea of campus free speech, the idea of allowing students, helping students to understand that their diversity of thought, experience, deductive reasoning, the value and opinions is incredibly important. If I could read just real quickly from the Supreme Court in Healy versus James, he said, peculiarly, geez, see if I can speak, the marketplace of ideas where young adults learn to exercise constitutional rights necessary to participate in our system of government and to tolerate others' exercise of the same rights. There is no room for that view, and when there's no room for that view, the First Amendment protection should apply with There's no room that the First Amendment protection should apply with less force on college campuses than in the community at large. In other words, we don't check our First Amendment when we enter a college campus. And unfortunately, we have experienced some problems here in Idaho. I'd rather not get into them and talk about the universities, including the latest where that's happened. My point is not to call out universities, is to make sure that our universities understand that you can't create speech zones and you can't create speech codes. You know, particularly oftentimes it seems to affect maybe a conservative Christian where maybe they want to pass out information or have a little rally and they're sent to the North 40 on the campus where nobody can find them and nobody can hear or see them. Those things wouldn't be right. You know, this legislation has passed over 20 states, and in quite a number of states, it's passed with unanimous bipartisan consent. And so Representative John McCrosty had brought it with me a few years back, and I really appreciated his insight to all of this. It was very important to him.
Brian, this should be a bipartisan thing. I mean, we're talking about free speech. We're talking about being able to be in the quote marketplace of ideas, which is a university, to share your opinions. And that could be like from the wild, like free Palestine movement to the wild, pro-life movement to whatever it is on any campus. And you would think here in Idaho that there'd be widespread Democrat support because this is largely a conservative state. And you would think that all the colleges are probably like overwhelmingly conservative, so Democrats and liberals would want to have this. I know I say that in jest somewhat, but for some reason Democrats are not on board. At least at this point, some of them aren't.
Yeah, going back to 1950s and 60s, colleges were conservative. They reflected the values of America as a whole. And you had angry leftists who said, we want free speech. We want to be able to speak our minds. We want to be able to protest. We want to be able to push our worldview. And eventually, after some resistance, those colleges and universities gave in. Now that generation is the ones running the show. They're the ones in charge at the colleges, and they want to be able to push the idea that America is irredeemably racist and sexist and hateful and bigoted, and that boys and girls can become the opposite gender, and that whatever else is going for left-wing thought, that abortion is a human right, and they decide that, well, okay, we've got this now. We don't want to let opposing views be heard, so they just say that anything that opposes their worldview is hate speech and must be shut down. If you say that unborn babies are human beings, well, that's hate speech. If you say that, hey, maybe men and women are different, well, that's hate speech. And so they shut it down. I was looking up this quote here from Frank Herbert, author of the Dune books. He says, when I'm weaker than you, I ask for freedom because that's according to your principles. When I'm stronger, I take away your freedom because that's according to my principles. The idea of free speech is something that's embedded in America. It's in our First Amendment. The freedom of speech shall not be infringed. And so when the left wanted to, have that ability, they used that. They said, well, our ideals as Americans is freedom of speech, so we need to uphold that. Okay, that's great. Well, now we need to continue upholding that. We can't just change things because another group is in charge. Free speech is free speech.
It is. And for someone like Senator Ruckty, the good senator from District 29 out in Pocatello, in the heart of is it Idaho State University out there? This is what he had to say in response to this bill.
I'm concerned about the remedies section, compensatory damages of up to $25,000. It's a private cause of action. I think I've over the last few years expressed my concerns with private cause of action and the fact that they encourage people to seek trouble as opposed to the normal reason that we have private cause of action, which is when trouble seeks them. So I have concerns about that. I also have concerns about just this is a ongoing concern about legislation that we pass here. These legislative findings at the beginning of the piece of legislation where we cite cases and give cursory explanations as to what the legislature thinks these Supreme Court cases say or don't say. I think it's poor statutory drafting, and that's not a criticism of LSO, because I think it's not LSO that's being asked to put that information in there, but courts don't look at legislative findings. They read the plain language of the statute in front of them, and if it can be read plainly, that's how they interpret it, even if it results in something absurd. And the reason they do that is because
Brian,
it's not their...
Come on, man. I mean, we talk about this all the time. They look, if they could look at a bill and say, this was drafted on a yellow paper, normally it's on white paper, I'm going to vote against this. Like, whatever they can do to find a reason to vote against something that violates or that's trying to protect your rights, it seems like they do.
Yeah, the good senator is not going to come out and say, I oppose free speech. No, I totally support free speech. This bill is written in such a way that it's not going to actually do what you think. Now, it is important for our legislators to look for unintended consequences, but at the same time, at some point, you start to see what's actually going on, that he's just looking for an excuse to vote against something that, as a whole, the Democratic Party is definitely not in favor of free speech now. Remember, several people in the party, I think John Kerry and Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton during the last election cycle were talking about their plans to censor the internet, to censor your speech, to do what Britain and Germany are doing, throw people in prison for social media posts. Colleges have been a hotbed of this for a long time. You have, organizations such as FIRE that have been fighting for free speech on college campuses for decades now, because that's, they have been shutting down conservative speech and Christian speech, and they've been, it is time for the legislature to get involved and say, hey, we're not going to let this go on.
Yeah. So, he can complain all he wants about, why should we have all this background information in this bill? And this is just going to open it up to lawsuits and stuff. Like, this whole notion of what happened to just this is about protecting your rights. If someone will always come along, there will always be what do they call them? Ambulance chasers. There will always be somebody that walks into a restaurant looking to trip or looking to see if it's ADA compliant. You'll always have that. You cannot legislate against bad actors in terms. You can only put up roadblocks. You can only put up things that if someone's going after you for fraud, then that has to happen. But you can't just. We have to protect our rights first and foremost. That's it. That's just full stop. And
speaking of bad actors, that's been what the left has been doing for a long time. You have that guy in Colorado who keeps suing the cake shop and they do it deliberately. If you have one cake shop that says, "Hey, we'll sell you anything, but we're not going to write things we disagree with on the cake," and another cake shop down the road that says, "Hey, we'll do whatever you want," they could easily go to the other one, but they choose to go to the first one to try and force the issue and get their way. It's stamping out any dissent, any disagreeing views, and that's got to stop.
Yeah, great point. Great analogy. Great comparison. That's exactly and that's called projection, right? They always claim it's projection. Claiming what someone else is doing, and in reality, it's what you're doing. So
right, you don't see conservatives doing that much. I mean, if there are, I haven't heard much of it. Trying to find businesses to sue just because you don't like what they, the beliefs or the who they are.
Yeah.
Maybe decades ago, but not now.
Right. Okay. The House has adjourned now as well, so both of them are done for the afternoon. They'll be back later today to go through more bills. I think we are in that sort of double session territory now, so we'll keep an eye on that. Another bill that we wanted to kind of touch on here, which I think is really, in the spirit of DOGE, in the spirit of holding people accountable, was House Bill 268, which Josh Tanner brought over to the Senate today. And this bill would basically reclassify certain employees in our agencies from what are called non-classified employees or classified employees. And this doesn't mean that they're secret. It just means that they're classified in a certain way. But right now there's certain employees that can't really get fired at will. They have to go through some sort of mediation or probation if something is wrong. Josh Tanner, Representative Josh Tanner, was in a Senate committee today presenting that bill, which I think is pretty interesting. Let's watch that.
So the bill before you deals with executive employees. Currently, they are considered classified employees. Again, when you look at the FLMA policy, realistically, they shouldn't be. But within our current law, we kind of work around that in a sense. The problem we run into is that these are the decision-making people within the state. When we actually direct them for funds through JFAC, or they're managing, hiring, firing, making those type of decisions, they're a protected class currently, which makes us more in line with states like California, Massachusetts, New York, usually states that don't align with us very often. This bill just moves us more into policies, more in line with FLSA, but also within more states that align with us, like Texas, Florida, which is, in my opinion, a better scenario overall. Bill itself, there's not a lot to it. It literally just has a couple strikes and one add, but it just makes it so that those decision-making people are non-classified, which means they are an at-will employee. They serve like a director would as well. But I do think it's better to have those people that are making those decisions for us not be a protected class of people. Those people should be non-classified.
Amen. I mean, there you have it. Senator Ben Adams had a question, which some of you might out there also have, and I think let's watch that, and then we'll get your take on it, Brian.
Would this how would this affect? So last year I was on JFAC, and we had the division of overspent their budget. Would this also allow us to go in and figure out where that money, and because last year in that committee, all that weight fell on the agency director, even though we knew she didn't have complete control, because obviously, as you're pointing out, there are people that work underneath her that allocate funds and things like that. How would that impact that specific scenario?
Representative Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator Adams. I think this is exactly what I'm getting to within the points that I'm trying to make within this, is that director now takes the brunt for all the decisions that are done below them, which is how a director should be. but that director has zero ability to go back and actually address and deal with them in a sense of a way. I mean, they can put them on probation, but then they just then they're waiting for 6 months while they're. I mean, we've made it extremely hard for them to do their job as director because of what we've actually done and had these classified positions protected. Again, we want people in there that are making these decisions to be the ones that that know that there's consequences to those decisions that are made. No different than, I think, us as well. I mean, we have to go back to our constituents on the decisions that we make here every session and go back and explain what we've actually done. And when they don't like it, they fire us.
Yeah, boom. I mean, which way, Brian? Which way? Do we go along with Texas and Florida and those folks, or do we continue down the path of California, New York, Massachusetts?
It's all about accountability. You know, our elected legislature is accountable to we the people. They come before us every 2 years, and we decide whether to keep them or replace them, or who to put in office. The governor is accountable. He comes to the people every 4 years, and we decide who's going to be the chief executive of our state. And then the governor appoints directors of all of these agencies that are confirmed by the Senate. So there's some accountability there, not as much, but there's some, because it's appointed by the elected governor and confirmed by the elected Senate. And then at the level below that, you have all these decision makers, and that's what Representative Tanner's going after. And the way they're structured now, there's not a lot of accountability, because say, take the Department of Health and Welfare. It's been run a long time, a certain way, and then the governor appoints a new director. And that new director wants to come in and change things around, but he's stymied in some ways because some of the people who make decisions, who perhaps have been making bad decisions for the past few years, it's very hard to fire them or move them out just because of the way our employment laws for state employees are structured. And I think this is a very positive development because it will give those directors who are appointed by the governor and therefore fairly accountable to us, it will give them more leeway in doing what needs to be done. I thought Senator Adams' question was really good. You have the Department of Vocational Rehab where things were done in an improper way and they ended up way over budget. And yeah, the director fell on her sword, metaphorically, as she probably should have, because the director is responsible. But as Representative Tanner pointed out, that director did not have the ability to fire or remove some of the employees who might have been part of the problem. And that's, in any private sector, it's almost always that way. You put in a boss, and that boss has the ability to hire and fire to do what needs to be done to make the department more efficient or return to their core mission or whatever. And that's what we need in the public sector desperately.
Absolutely. And again, to highlight Senator Ruckty again, and folks, it makes it seem like we're harping on a few Democrats over and over again, but there's only a few Democrats in the legislature.
There's just barely over a dozen Democrats in the state, so they're always going to be the target.
They're all this way. So just at least for right now. But let's watch Senator Ruckty here kind of defend the status quo. Watch this.
Wasn't on the ballot, they'd vote for a Republican governor. So you had the governor's office changing hands I'm not sure I have concerns with the bill just because I'm not sure we're appreciating the importance of having stability in the decisions that our executive agencies are making. Stability means predictability in many cases. The governor in this state used to be elected every 2 years, but during FDR's 5 terms, whenever the president was on the ballot, the people of Idaho would vote for a Democratic governor, and whenever he wasn't on the ballot, they'd vote for a Republican governor. So you had the governor's office changing hands every 2 years, and no administration could get anything going because there was just constant change. And I think, obviously not the same thing, but it just is an indicator that you need some stability in government. And sometimes when you get a great new idea, you need a little pushback on it. Things shouldn't change so quickly that you don't have predictability. So,
all right. Brian, I mean, seriously,
I'm going to vote against the bill.
Again, another excuse to not have accountability. And what sort of stability is he talking about? The ability to just to keep bad people on, the ability to continue wasting money, the ability to just keep expanding government. I mean, obviously he's all for those things, but like, another weak argument.
It must be eating Democrats like Senator Ruckey up awfully that President Trump is doing so much at the executive level, because that's not supposed to happen. He was stymied by that in his first term, and they're trying to stop him now, but he's having trouble. This goes back a long time. You have back in the 1880s. Before then, the president would just appoint almost everyone in the executive branch, and that was leading to problems where it was corruption and people buying jobs, and unqualified people who just happen to support the president were getting we're getting positions in the federal government. So they passed the Civil Service Act, says we're just going to do it by meritocracy. And unfortunately, that's been perverted now into a technocracy, where we're just going to be ruled by experts. We can't trust the voters and the people they elect to actually run the government. We need an entire class of workers who actually run the country. And then this is really what we're seeing over the past few weeks is the first real rejection of that concept in a long time. Theo Wold, the former Solicitor General here in Idaho, has said several times that we're still living with Cecil Andrus's government. He was the last Democrat governor of Idaho way back, 35 years ago. And he appointed a lot of people who then hired people within the state government. And because of these Byzantine rules that make it very hard to get rid of people, we're still living with that effect, because those people hire more people who hire more people who hire more people, and the entire structure of it is designed to prevent accountability. And so this bill by Representative Tanner, I think, is a great start to restoring accountability to our government, which is supposed to serve the people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Okay, we're towards the end of the show here. We're not going to be able to have, looks like Senator Zeiderveld. We also asked Representative Beiswinger to come on. Senate Bill 1031 passed overwhelmingly in the House. And this dealt with the Panhandle Health Districts. I'm sorry, not the Panhandle Health. That's the one we call it up here, but all the health districts across the state, and whether or not they can do all things when an emergency happens. And so that passed overwhelmingly in the House. I think.
Excellent.
Yeah. What was it? It was 60 something. I got a text
bipartisan.
Here. 65-1. Look at that.
Excellent.
A few people out on that vote, but 65-1. So yeah, very good. All right, Brian.
More accountability.
What's that?
There's just more accountability. Central health districts, or ours is Central Health, so I always call it that. They should be accountable, not our overlords.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, over the weekend, actually yesterday, we published Alman, your weekly article over on X on this one on Life and Liberty. We titled it. Fantastic article here, Brian. Walk us through a little bit on it real quickly so we can entice people to go over and check it out.
Yeah, I was writing this article Friday morning as I had the House and Senate on the other screen, and it was interesting just hearing the discussions talking about the medical freedom. Should government have the right, or even private businesses have the right to tell you have to take an experimental injection in order to maintain your job, or in order to do anything? And at the same time, there was another bill being debated about personhood. About teaching school children that unborn babies are babies rather than just clumps of cells, and just listening to the debate, as well as what you've talked about, what's going on in the Boise school district and all the school districts. It reminded me that the primary purpose of government is to protect the life and liberty of the people. That's what our founder said. That's what that's our political philosophy in the West going back centuries. And we're kind of at a crossroads, I feel like, because like you say about the girls in the bathroom who have to share that with a male student doing indecent things. Over the weekend, there was another story about girls who were forced to change in a locker room with a male student, and their teachers even blockaded the doors to prevent them from just leaving in protest. What is going on? This is not government protecting life and liberty. This is government targeting your life and liberty, and that's backwards. And we need to continue to see our legislature push back on that. And that's what I talk about.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, really important stuff, folks. Be sure you're following the account over there, and you can see all these weekly articles that Alman contributes over on X account, and it's only available on X, so you got to follow us on X. Whoever's sharing that screen is not following Citizens Alliance. Maybe they're not logged in. You're outed. No, just kidding. Brian, where can people follow you and keep tabs on the rest of your other work?
Well, in addition to my weekly articles at Citizens Alliance on X, I also have Gem State Brian on X, where I do a lot of live tweeting and just commentary on local politics, trying not to focus on the national stuff much because there's enough people doing that. Also at gemstatechronicle.com, continuing to put out usually one article a day throughout the week. Covered the digital driver's licenses and the debanking bill, and there's a ton more to talk about this week.
Yeah, there is. We're just getting started, folks. So, Alman, we'll have you back tomorrow, and keep tabs, everybody. It's really good to see you, brother.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, take care. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us. Just a reminder, idahosignal.live, if you're listening to us there, that is something you can just go right there in your browser. Head over to idahosignal.live. It'll bring up the little radio version of this program where you're listening to us live right now. And then once it's done, once the show goes off the air, give it a few minutes and it'll start looping today's broadcast until we go live again tomorrow. So you can always take us on the go, idahosignal.live. Also, it is time to sign, folks. We're in the thick of it. 41 legislators have signed the pledge. Who will be number 42? Check out our website to be sure to figure out who is a pledge signer, who is your representative, who's your senator, and if they're a pledge signer. And basically, folks, we're just looking for legislators who will say, these are the things that I will vote for, and these are the things I won't vote for. And it's all about values, folks. It's all about values. People swear an oath to the Constitution. They say, I will uphold the Constitution. But guess what? Democrats and Republicans swear the same oath, but it tells you nothing about their values. It may have 50, 60 years ago, but we live in a different world now, folks. We live in a different world. And you just saw Senator Ruckty sit there and say he won't support free speech. Okay. Well, if you're going to swear to uphold the Constitution, that's part of it. And apparently he's not for it. So, all right, everybody. We'll be back here again tomorrow to keep you tabs on everything. It's so good to see you. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.